Every once in a while, as I re-experience Haikyuu, I come across a moment that redefines what this story means to me. A moment that might have not meant anything to me the first time I encountered it, or even the second time. But as I learned more about myself, grew as a person, gained new experiences, suddenly that moment became something I could now connect with the most. A moment that makes me realize what the true beauty of this story is. Its relatability. It's just mind-blowing to me that every time I revisit this series, I have a new character or a moment that speaks to me on a personal level. On my first watch, I related to Oikawa the most, who so perfectly encapsulated my thoughts and feelings at the time. On my second rewatch, I suddenly related to Tanaka the most, and his journey inspired me to do better. On my third, it was Hinata, because of this newfound hunger I had for making videos. I saw a part of me in almost every single character, and there was something to learn from each of them. And so, today, I want to talk about a character that I think I relate to the most right now. A character that I didn't think much of during my first read, but one that I now realize embodies me the best out of any character in Haikyuu. A character who taught me a lesson that I will forever remember. A lesson that honestly changed my outlook on life. Of course, I'm talking about none other than Kamo Meidai's immovable wall, Hirugami Sachiro. Hirugami is a character that I didn't relate to at all when I first came across him, and I think I know why. He was portrayed as this calm, reliable blocker that didn't feel any pressure. He was always seen with a beaming smile, a relaxed posture, and overall came off as this guy who had figured himself out. A guy that had already dealt with his issues, his struggles, his demons. A guy whose character arc was completed, which was the exact opposite for me. My arc was nowhere near done, and so to me, this character was just a really dangerous player on a really dangerous team. Of course, we did get a brief flashback that explains his journey, but during my first read, I didn't realize how close it hit to home. I didn't realize how close young Hirugami's mindset was to mine, because at the time, I myself was unaware that I even had this mindset. And so, Hirugami's arc, as well as mine, revolves around this idea of expectations. Ever since he was a kid, Hirugami had been living in a volleyball world. His family consisted of accomplished players performing at the highest level, and he himself had a knack, a natural talent for the game. Due to this, it was inevitable that he too would fall in love with the sport, and so that's how Hirugami's journey of volleyball growth and improvement began. However, there was a flip side to that influence. As he grew older, that drive to get better, that hunger for improvement, got a little too intense. He began beating himself up over the smallest things and was highly critical of every single mistake he made. Even if he performed well or got an award, the only things on his mind were the aspects he failed in, the areas he thought he could have done better in. Hirugami became this tense kid who was always on edge. Someone who had forgotten the reason he even began playing. Someone who had forgotten what it meant to relax. Someone who had stopped having fun. And this was because of the expectations that he placed on himself. Unknowingly or knowingly, Hirugami began comparing himself to his family and their achievements, which gave birth to these insane expectations. After all, to his brother, his sister, volleyball was their whole life. It meant the world to them. And while many people would be inspired by such role models, others could feel overwhelmed by them, which was the case for Hirugami. In Hirugami's mind, at the very least, he had to reach that same level. He wanted every single pass to be successful, every single hit to score a point, every single serve to be an ace. And man, when you have that kind of a mindset, you unnecessarily put a ridiculous amount of pressure on yourself. Whenever he made a play, he would think, I have to make this point. Whenever he scored a point, he would think, I have to do this again. Whenever he would mess up, he would think, I have to get better. He practiced day in and day out, but always kept that pressure in the back of his mind. And that is a terrible thing to do. Because no matter how hard you practice, if you're constantly expecting the world from yourself, that stress will build up, and it will explode when you make a fatal mistake. That's exactly what happened to Hirugami. In the days before his first official national level tournament, Hirugami kept telling himself he had to perform, he had to do good. And that stress definitely built up. In that game, he had the skills, but his movements were stiff, his posture was tense, his fingers locked in, and that caused him to make a lot of silly mistakes. With a smash that barely squeaks past Hirugami's outstretched fingers, his team loses the game. Hirugami's expectations ended up putting shackles on not only his mental state, but also his physical capabilities. And look, it is good to reflect on your mistakes, but not at the expense of your happiness. There should be a balance between acknowledging your mistakes, but also appreciating the things you did right. But of course, that isn't a realization that comes to everyone, and sometimes that mindset becomes a lifestyle. It becomes a habit. Personally, I can really relate to Hirugami's situation. Not in terms of how his family was filled with all these talented athletes, more on the lines of, I know what it's like to have crazy expectations of myself. For the longest time, until just recently, I've been quite hard on myself. I have been the biggest critique of me, constantly being on edge and stressing over the smallest mistakes. You have to write X amount of words today. You have to edit X amount of minutes today. And if I didn't hit those goals, I would go to bed feeling terribly guilty. I loved what I was doing, but these expectations put some kind of pressure on me. Over time, I got used to that mindset. It became a habit. Until I was reminded of a simple yet eye-opening lesson. And so, after that heartbreaking defeat, it was about time all of Hirugami's built-up stress exploded. As he walks back home, going over all the things he did wrong in that match and all the mistakes he made, he puts the blame for his performance on his hands. After all, in his mind, Hirugami knows what needs to be done. He knows the plays, he knows the timings. It's just his hands that couldn't keep up. In Hirugami's mind, it's his hands that made the mistakes. And here, we get a panel that I sure as hell never expected. A panel that truly showed me how far people can go when under the heavy spell of expectations. A panel that shows a young Hirugami scraping his knuckles on a wall, blood smearing the hard stone with what he believed to be his failure. You know, sometimes a person is so invested in what they're doing, so invested in what they should be doing, that it becomes much more than a game for them. And that has positive outcomes, but also negative ones. This panel is not something I enjoy looking at, but one that I can appreciate for its raw depiction of Hirugami's built-up frustration and stress. It's one of the saddest scenes in Haikyuu, and the lowest point for Hirugami Sachiro's character. However, somehow, this also became the most important moment of his life. A young Hoshiyumi, Hirugami's teammate, seeing what he was up to, immediately goes up to him and stops him. Before Hoshiyumi can even ask him what's going on though, we get a heartbreaking realization from a frustrated Hirugami. You know, I'm sure that I just don't like volleyball much. It's probably something that he'd known subconsciously for a long time, but something that he didn't want to admit. He was pushing himself way too much. It had consumed his life, and that obsession to get better spiraled out of control. Hirugami got burnt out. Why don't you just quit then? If you don't play volleyball, it's not going to kill you. A simple few words, but they were the words that changed Hirugami's life. This whole time, every second he'd been playing volleyball, Hirugami didn't even consider the option that he could just quit for a while, take a rest, a break, relax. To him, a person surrounded by the game of volleyball since the day he was born, this was his life. But he'd never stopped to think what would happen if he stopped. And the answer was nothing. Nothing would happen. Life would just go on and he'd be doing something different for a while. And that's a comforting thought. It's okay to take a break every once in a while. It's okay to make mistakes. This one conversation, this one realization, this one lesson hit Hirugami harder than anything. From here on out, Hirugami stopped caring about messing up. He stopped being the ideal player that he always wanted to be, because that simply wasn't possible. As a result, he relaxed, took it easy, and that, combined with Kamo Meidai's philosophy, turned him into the monster he is today. I think Hirugami going to Kamo Meidai was the best way to wrap up his character because of that team's amazing philosophy. Habit becomes second nature. This philosophy perfectly embodies his entire journey because until that moment, Hirugami's life was filled with bad habits that had become instinctual to him. However, as time passed, those bad habits were transformed into great ones, habits that earned Hirugami a deadly reputation as a high-level player. An immovable wall that was capable of stopping any opponent and adjusting to any circumstances. An immovable wall who was free of the shackles of expectations. As I reread this chapter just a few days ago, it hit me too. It made me realize what was wrong with my mindset, and even though it wasn't as extreme as Hirugami's, at its core, it was definitely the same idea. This idea of expectations, and after rereading that scene, I've been trying to do better. I'm trying to take it easy, and already I've seen a lot of benefit to my lifestyle because of it. And this isn't just a message for me, but to all of you out there that may be stressed out or are beating yourselves up over the smallest of things. Don't worry, keep your head up and keep making mistakes. After all, making a mistake is not gonna kill you. Thank you for watching this video. Before I end the video, I just want to say that I now have a Discord server called The Rain Base. If you enjoy my channel, if you enjoy Haikyuu, the Cosmere, and just want to engage with the community, I think it's a pretty cool place with pretty cool people where you can kind of just go and chill and talk to people about all the things that you like. If you enjoy my channel and enjoy the content, I would really appreciate and would love to see you there. So the link is down in the description if you'd like to join. Other than that, if you enjoyed the video, consider liking, subscribing, and all that good stuff. And I guess I'll see you on the next one.